Hello everyone, today I want to talk about competing with men. And I think this is something that gets dressed up as empowerment quite often. In fact, so consistently that most people never really, even think to question it. So competing with men, proving yourself to them, and paying your way into being seen as an equal. That's what I want to talk about today. I had a conversation not that long ago, and someone asked me, and that was, a genuine question, and a good friend of mine who I respect and value. And they asked, "But don't you want to prove that you can do this? Be independent, make your own money." And I remember thinking, prove to who? I make my own money, I own my own place, I handle my life, not because I wanted to demonstrate something to someone. It's because life required it of me and I just got on with it. There was no audience in my head when I was doing any of it, no invisible panel of judges that I was performing for. I have the option to do these things and I just do them, unlike, many women in the past. So it's kind of the norm. And when someone framed it as proving something, I genuinely did not know who they thought I was proving it to. To be honest, the conversation itself was, I think, about men and my preferences at the time. So, like, it will have stemmed from that. But I think a lot of women still do operate from that lens, and it's worth, talking about today. So, to understand why, we need to acknowledge where this comes from. For a very long time, let's be honest, for a very long time, systems were in place that actively dismissed women's capability. Employers discriminated, opportunities were withheld. A woman's word carried less weight in rooms where men made decisions, and male entitlement, the assumption that a man's opinion, judgment, and presence carries authority, at least compared to that of a woman, wasn't something that had to be earned. It just existed by default. There were certain times where this was very much the case. So you can't really blame women for reacting to that. The history behind it is very much real. However, you cannot change a system from the outside by performing for it from within. And a lot of what we call empowerment today, I think, is just a reaction. So, what does that reaction actually look like in practice? I have an example that illustrates this perfectly. A friend of mine insisted on splitting the bill with her now boyfriend on their first date. Not because she particularly wanted to, but because she wanted him to see her as an equal. And she was very clear about that when she told me. And I remember thinking to myself, why wouldn't he see you as an equal regardless? Why is equality something that needs to be purchased? Or, well, for women anyway. Why does it have to have a price? When did we attach a price to it? And like, who decided that the price was like splitting half the bill? Because what she was actually doing without realizing it was auditioning. She was performing financial independence to earn a perception she felt she didn't automatically have, which means that she had already decided that he did not see her as an equal and that she was trying to kind of change his mind. Keep in mind, we have absolutely no idea how he perceived her before they got to the bill anyway, or what his beliefs were. Obviously, it was a first date, you can't really know. But the moment you're trying to change someone's mind about your worth, you've already handed them the position of judge. You've already handed them an enormous amount of power. Equality isn't something you earn. It isn't something you perform your way into. It isn't unlocked by splitting enough bills or out earning enough men or proving enough things, you name it. It is a baseline. Equality is a baseline. It's a given, something that should exist regardless of what you do or what you don't do. And when we act like we have to earn it, we basically accept a premise that was never true in the first place. Any manner dynamic that requires you to prove yourself before showing basic respect has already told you all everything you need to know. I promise you the answer isn't to prove harder, just stop auditioning entirely. So the act of needing to prove something to someone automatically places them above you. Not because they're better, necessarily, or because they've earned that position, it's because you've assigned it to them. You have decided that what they think about your capability, your independence, your intelligence matters more than what you know about yourself already. Here's the interesting part. The man in question might be completely ordinary, less educated, less experienced, less capable in any number of ways. It doesn't matter, really. The moment you start performing for his approval, you've elevated him. It's that simple. That's not equality. I promise you it's not equality. It's the opposite of it. And it shows up in other ways too. The way some women downplay relationships, for example, family or anything perceived as soft. And I'd like to say it's just in professional settings. Sadly, I think it's in any settings. And it's all because they've internalized the idea that those things make them less. They make them less credible. They make them less credible, less serious, less worth listening to. The woman who feels like she has to justify taking a career break, who treats choosing family as something to apologize for or explain away, who carries a quiet shame about not being in the same place professionally as someone who didn't make the same choices. That's not right. It shouldn't be happening. As if building a family, raising children, stepping away from a career for a season or two doesn't count. As if achievement only looks one way. I have another example with another friend who was set on having 3 children. Not one, not two, specifically 3, because that was enough for no one to question why she was a stay-at-home mom. In her mind anyway. Like, who cares what people think? Why do we automatically feel like we have to justify our choices? You want to be a mom? Be a mom. And we've been measuring ourselves against a standard that was never designed for us. And then feeling like we're falling short constantly. Taking a career break doesn't mean that you can't go back. I'm sorry, it really doesn't. It doesn't mean that you've fallen behind permanently or that you have made yourself less capable. That's a limiting belief. If you did it once with half the experience you have now, you'll do it again. Kids will add more responsibility, yes, but they grow up. There's the financial aspect of things as well, but that's like a separate topic entirely. So the confidence to make that choice and come back on your own terms without the narrative that you've lost something, that's what unlearning this actually looks like, in my opinion. So there is a particular flavor of this online that I find a little bit exhausting. The content built around I did this without a man, I bought this myself, or I don't need anyone. Whether that's a post on its own or a comment in response to someone who told you that you have what you have because of your dad, husband, boyfriend, whatever. It's almost like a defense mechanism. Financial independence is real and important. Being able to stand on your own feet matters enormously, especially in this economy. But when that independence becomes a performance or defense mechanism, or rather reaction, and it's being broadcast to make a point to men or to women who chose differently, it's not freedom and it's not independence. Real independence doesn't need an audience, again, in my opinion. It doesn't need to make anyone uncomfortable to prove anything to anyone. It just exists. And this is where the competition stops being just about men and it starts being about women too. Because the judgment doesn't only flow outward, it flows sideways as well. The woman performing independence judging the woman who chose to be provided for example, the woman who went back to work judging the woman who stayed at home, and vice versa. The woman who splits every bill judging the woman who lets him pay, and again, vice versa. The behavior is not justified. Everyone basically performing their version of the right kind of woman, which means the competition that started as a reaction to male entitlement has become something that we do to each other now. And I can't decide which one is worse. It only serves the system that started it and no one else. So, what is the alternative? It starts with 2 questions. What do you want? And most importantly, why do you want it? Because we don't always know. Realistically speaking, the conditioning we have grown up with very much shapes our choices, what feels natural, what feels right, what feels like our own idea, when a lot of the time it actually isn't. So, before the choice, the question matters. Why do you want what you want? And where does it actually come from? That's where it starts. So when you think about the choices that you make, whether that's like professionally, financially, personally, how many of them are genuinely yours? And how many are reactions to a system that's made you compete with men? That's it. So yeah, that's it from me for today. Do let me know your thoughts in the comments as usual. Let me know what you think about the concept of obviously competing with men and how this is framed as empowerment. Should we be doing that? I don't think we should be, but what's the alternative? What do you think we can do to be a bit more responsible ourselves and handle this a little bit better? So yeah, see you in the next video.